Hi, everyone. This is Rob Roy, and welcome to this edition of the Hub Financial Crypto Show with all things crypto. Mr. Brandon Burton will bring him in just a moment. But before we get to Brandon, let's just do a quick rundown of what's going on in the U.S. markets. As you can see, we are following through yesterday's big move to the upside on the retail sales report, the economic report. Reports have come in. The PPI was a little weaker than expected. The CPI was pretty much in line with expected expectations. So I guess you could draw a little bit of a fact that maybe margins could increase, but we also know the economic data has weakened just a bit. I was a little surprised by the severity of the move to the upside yesterday, and we're following it through. Last night for our insiders meeting with the alert subscribers at ewotrader.com, I had drawn this red line as a point of potential resistance. That's what we're hitting right now. We'll see where things close on this Friday. Little concern about this gap up, and we certainly have the definition of a V bottom here, whether you're a believer in V bottoms or not. I was always taught in the early days not to trust V bottoms, but they have been successful in the past, so I don't know if that's really appropriate. I believe that you just have to trade what the market's telling you. That's a whole lot more successful than trading what you think the market's going to do. I learned that lesson a long time ago as well. So here we are right up against this resistance area. If I bring the moving averages on, you can see that we are getting just a little bit overbought. And isn't that bizarre with where we were just 2 weeks ago on almost a Black Monday, not quite, but down here. And we've just rallied straight back up. The market is really focused on these Fed rate cuts. The Fed fund futures have brought it down from 150 basis points that were factored in to 100. We've gone down from 50 basis points in September to 25. So the numbers this morning on the Fed fund futures were 25 basis point cut in September, another 25 in November, and then 50 basis points in December. So that makes up the 100 basis points of rate cuts. And the market seems to be liking that. But I'm a little concerned that now, with the economic data that's come out, inflationary data weakening, that's a good thing. But with economic data weakening, how much weakening are we going to get between now and the September meeting? And if that's only 25 basis points, it takes a long time for rate hikes or rate cuts to work themselves through the market. So this isn't going to be a quick fix for the economy if we do continue to see weakening economic data. So I still have a little bit of concern that the Fed may be late to the party on cutting rates if the economic data becomes weakened. I thought today we might see a little backing and filling from yesterday's gap up, but so far, no. So far, we're just continuing the move to the upside. We are getting a positive 1030 cross here. That's the green line is the 10-day moving average. The fuchsia colored line is the 30. So you can see we're about to break above that. We're well above the 50-day moving average now. So all things are pretty crazy considering where we were. It's been a volatile couple of weeks, both to the downside and now back to the upside. The question becomes, in my mind, if we can break through this little bit of resistance here in this 550 area and go back up and test those wave 5 highs. If we do make a new 5, does that 5 move over and this is a continuation of the wave 5? Could that relabel to a 3? I don't see that happening. But nonetheless, we're moving back to the upside. And if we take a look at volume, I have to admit that we all know that volume is lower on up days than down days. So these big red spikes are to be expected when we were moving lower. But these aren't that bad on the green bars. So there is some support for this move back to the upside. I just think we need to be a little cautious moving into the beginning of next week. Next week, we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. We're going to have the Fed in their annual Jackson Hole meeting. We got economic data coming out next week. So I think we're going to have some volatility return to the market again next week. Every comment that's made during the Jackson Hole Summit is going to be scrutinized. There'll be lots of opportunities for questioning all of the folks there. There's a lot of all things financial and Federal Reserve that show up to the Jackson Hole Summit every year. So hold on to your seatbelts. I don't know that we're necessarily going to be continuing to climb back up at the beginning of the week. So that's where we are. with the markets. And as I said, next week is going to be quite interesting. So, with that, without further ado, let's bring in Mr. Brandon Burton, and we can discuss what's going on in the crypto land. He always has some nice tidbits for us. How are you, Brandon? Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Rob. It's interesting watching you kind of go over that market stuff because the markets are doing really well. They like all the data coming out. Crypto's doing kind of something a little bit different, and I can kind of explain what's happening and then kind of what we have to look forward to. And I think it all kind of like circles around what's happening in the market. And then as we go into this Fed meeting coming up here in September, we're going to watch that as well. So I actually want to get your input on a couple of things here in just a minute, Rob. But let's get on with what's happening right now in crypto. And for us to stay based in crypto, we always have to look back at recent tweets at former fallen Bitcoin compadres. Our first one here, we have Nick Allen. Nick Allen, back in the day, it looks like October 25th, 2011. Super happy. Bitcoin down to $2.70 a pop. So glad I didn't buy in on that mess. And then somebody tweeted just like a few days ago and says, "Is this guy still alive?" Sure enough, Nick Allen responds right back, "Alive, but dead inside." So we always got to remember these things, especially in Bitcoin, where this is one of the most unique assets we've ever seen in the entire history of my life, and one of the fastest moving assets, faster than anything else since the new asset class. But this last week, we saw Bitcoin and Ethereum, all the crypto market took a major dip. And they took a dip at a time when the market was doing really well. So we have to kind of figure out, why is it dipping? Why is it falling when the market's doing well? And the first thing that we notice is the U.S. government seized a lot of Bitcoin. I can tell you how much here in just a second, but they seized a lot of Bitcoin, but they moved 10,000 of those Bitcoin over to Coinbase Prime. And a lot of people get scared and rattled by this news because they own so much Bitcoin. If they decided to dump it all, just like Germany did a couple of weeks back, it could be catastrophic for the market. So a lot of panic. And then you can see, here's the Bitcoin chart in comparison with the NASDAQ chart. You can see Bitcoin starting to separate, which doesn't usually happen. So let's pin this chart and we'll come back to it because this is important. We see Bitcoin creating this huge divergence. And this rarely happens to this large of a gap. But the reason that they did this, and so I can show you this, the United States owns 213,246 Bitcoin. And then we can see some of the other countries and how much Bitcoin they have as well. China, the UK, El Salvador. So this is the Bitcoin held by the governments. And then if we have this other graph that I've put on here, we pull this one up, it kind of goes through some other countries that have it. Ukraine actually has a lot of Bitcoin, 46,000 Bitcoin. Germany had 50,000 Bitcoin. You can see that little tail in. I don't know if you can zoom in far enough on that chart, probably not, but you can see Germany sold all their Bitcoin, so they have zero. El Salvador is the one that we want to touch on here because they have 5,800 Bitcoin, and they're a steady rise because El Salvador does something a little unique. They buy one Bitcoin every single day because El Salvador read the Bitcoin standard, and they believe that being on Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset for their country is going to be beneficial in the long run. And so far, that's proved to be correct. And so more and more people are looking at El Salvador. El Salvador might be the shining light here in this bunch here. But as we see the United States sell their Bitcoin, they have 213,000. Obviously, that's catastrophic and a little bit worrisome to the market. Now, 10,000 Bitcoin is actually only like $600 million worth. And as you know, MicroStrategy buying $2 billion worth of Bitcoin is going to eat that up in a heartbeat. But everybody gets scared with these types of headlines, and so they start to react and overreact. In conjunction with that, if we look at the Bitcoin, this is the historical monthly Bitcoin returns chart. We can kind of see which months are the best. And you'll notice on this chart, August and September are actually some of the worst months for Bitcoin for whatever reason, whether it's coming off the summer lull, whether it's just getting back into things, but September being the worst of every single month with an average negative percentage return of negative 4.78%. And out of every month that we've had a September Bitcoin in existence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Out of 12, 9 of them, so 75% of them have been negative. I don't know if that trend's going to continue. It's like flipping a coin in Vegas and saying the coin's going to end up heads just because it's ended up heads the other 11 times, which is silly to me. But I just wanted to show this chart because we have to kind of reference this and know the spot we're in Bitcoin. And with all this uncertainty in the market and the United States selling, And if you remember back that chart we showed with the NASDAQ, the thing that I have as a positive with that chart is I see Bitcoin reconverging with the NASDAQ, and that could be a potential possibility coming up here soon. And the main reason I see that happening is because more and more trust and ETF players are still getting into Bitcoin. Morgan Stanley just bought $187 million this last week in Bitcoin through the ETFs because they just barely turned on their machine where 15,000 of their agents can go out and start marketing Bitcoin ETFs to all their clients. And they have $7 trillion in assets under management. They just reported their 13F filing, along with Goldman Sachs, who just reported they own $500 million worth of these ETFs. So many of these hedge funds, these trust funds, these other funds and bank institutions and other people are starting to hop on board because they can now access Bitcoin through these ETFs. So even though I paint a little bit of a darker picture for Bitcoin right now, and we saw this demise and the separation between the indexes, I still think Bitcoin is still on its normal course and its normal 4-year pattern. We see these lulls after the halving, but we're still going to be rocking and rolling. So this is where I kind of want to bring you in, Rob. I want to look at a couple charts here. I have the Ethereum chart pulled up on my screen here. So a couple of the assets that we're looking at right now is Ethereum. We could look at Bitcoin a little bit, but Bitcoin doesn't really interest me as a higher return play. I think Ethereum for me is a little bit better of a play just because, and I think we pulled this chart up last time, Ethereum is one of those charts that has just been absolutely beaten up. And with the ETFs and the selling after the ETF got approved, I think there's just so much downward pressure on Ethereum. I look at that more as a coiled spring rather than a continued downtrend. But then I wanted you to pull up too, in addition to Ethereum, I want your chart read on kind of both these. Salana. Solana is kind of the people's coin. It's where everybody seems to be going for more fast transactions and things like that. But Solana has network issues, which we could talk about ad nauseum. But I wanted you to take a look at both these charts for me, Ethereum and Solana. Which chart do you see looking better over the last little bit? Which one would you say, if you're just technically looking at these charts, would you say is going to be in an upward trend coming up here soon?
Actually, to be honest, Brandon, I think they both look ready to go. When you look at this chart of Solana here, you see that we had that vertical move up and then we've come back down. And so we've consolidated that vertical move to the upside. And now we're going through a consolidation. It looks like a pretty nice setup zigzag. So if the zigzag pattern plays out as it normally does, we should be finding a bottom here pretty quick and be ready to turn and move back to the upside. So when I look at that chart, it had that vertical move up, a little bit of a zigzag on the way up and coming back down. It looks pretty classic for a setup of something that's getting ready to move back to the upside in Solana there. And if we move over to Ethereum, you can talk about that chart and same type of a scenario here, but a slightly different setup. So we had the vertical move down, and then we've come up, and in this case, we zigzag to the upside. So it's a slightly different setup, but it looks like that one consolidating that move off of the lows in a sideways pattern. And I really like the set of higher lows there on that chart. So that one's slightly different than Solana, and that one looks on the verge of getting ready to go as well. Both those charts, even though at first blush they look kind of bearish because the current move is lower, but they're both consolidating. Those are good consolidation patterns, which I spend a lot of time looking at, and it looks like they're both. I mean that chart's just basing really, really well, and I think I guess if you had to give me to pick one, I would say that Ethereum maybe looks ready to go a little bit quicker, but that chart on Solana could turn at any time on that B wave correction. So they both look constructive to me, even though the average person looking at that, seeing all those big moves, would say that's about as ugly as it gets. But you know what they say, when things look pretty ugly, it's always darkest before the dawn, and that's the time to step in. So I like those, and I also wanted to refer back, Brandon, if you humor me for a moment, on that chart you showed of the Nasdaq versus Bitcoin, where the Nasdaq's gone straight up and Bitcoin's gone straight down, and that separation that ain't going to last. I think we're set up for both things. I think Bitcoin can move up and the Nasdaq come back down, and at some point they're going to meet in the middle because you showed that that chart and how correlated they've been. There we go. See where the NASDAQ's going straight. Nothing does that for very long. Nothing goes straight up or straight down for very long. And that separation's huge compared to where it's been. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think those two are going to come back together. I think it'll be a combination of both. When you see stuff like that, it's usually one comes back down, the other goes back up. So, all of them, even though we've been in this corrective phase, look pretty constructive. But I would pick, if I had to, the Ethereum chart
Hmm.
as the one I think's ready to go, because I really like that set of higher lows that it's showing there. Every time it's corrected, it's been a higher low, so it looks ready to go to me. And then all those gaps to get filled to the upside. So I don't know. When you look
All
at
right.
those, it seems like the ugliness is baked into the cake already, if you will.
That's it. Okay, so this is perfect because this is exactly what I wanted to hear from you, and I like that move. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to go, this is my DCA day, so I'm going to go 50-50 on each of these coins. We're going to touch back here in a week, and we're going to see where each of them is. I'm not a short-term holder on either of these. This is a long-term play for me. That being said, it will be nice to kind of come back and kind of see where these charts are going. But I agree with you. I do think Ethereum could have a little bit more of an upside play here, just because of how far it's fallen. Solana and I didn't really show you this, and I was kind of withholding this information. Solana actually, even though it's like languishing around these levels, it just reached an all-time high against Ethereum this last week, right? So if we were to pull up like an ETH/Solana chart, it would be an all-time low. Solana/ETH would be an all-time high, which it hasn't ever done before. So Solana had a lot of big, huge run against ETH, and I think people are actually piling now back out of Solana to catch the ETH play on the other side of things. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. I'm going to get both, but I did want to remind you, this is something we do over for our digital investors, the people that we do our weekly shows for over at Power Trade. We do these shows 5 times a week. We kind of go through all this stuff and we talk about Ethereum, we talk about Solana, we talk about everything else. But in addition to that, we talk about ways where these guys can earn extra on top of just buying ETH. I said I'm not a long-term holder. I said I'm not a trader. I'm more of a long-term holder. So what does that mean? That means if I have my Ethereum just sitting in a wallet, it's doing nothing. But if you actually want to provide some staking benefits or some upside to your Ethereum, you can go to a place like Lido.fi and you can take your Ethereum and you can actually stake it on a place like this. And you can earn an extra 3% on top of the Ethereum that you're already holding in your wallet there. So I don't know if you want to show my screen there or not, but the other thing that you could do, for example, if it's just not the Ethereum, if you bought Salana, Solana is actually a little bit more juicy. So you go to a place like StakeWiz and you can put your Solana into one of these pools here, and you get right now it looks like they're paying almost 9%. So in addition to the appreciation of your coins, so let's just say that Ethereum goes up to 4,000 or whatever, and your Solana goes up to whatever it goes up to. In addition to that, you also get the staking rewards on top of that, and that's just something that we kind of help walk our people through and kind of show these different things, these different ways to earn additional revenue. It's like if you were to own a stock in the Web2 world and you were to get dividends every day on just holding those assets in your portfolio. So it's kind of cool to be able to offer these different incentives and different utility, and you're actually strengthening each of those networks while you do this. So that's kind of cool.
That's really impressive. And I wanted to go back and comment on the country chart that you had shown, where El Salvador is basically DCAing. Who would have thought that El Salvador would be doing what you would consider, something really smart versus these other countries that are either selling or they buy in bulk, or like MicroStrategy, buying so much of it. You can't really criticize Sailor there with MicroStrategy. He's done pretty well with it. But I just think that I was really struck when you showed this on. That seems really smart, and you can tell by the graph where they're slowly increasing. Dollar cost averaging in. They're taking advantage of this dip, and they may be doing very well here by the end of the year, or a little bit later. And the one thing that we know is that these cryptos can really run. Bitcoin, Ethereum, when they're ready to get going, they can make up a lot of ground in a very short period of time. So to dollar cost average like that and take advantage of the dips sounds really smart to me. And that just really struck me when you showed that, because I don't know that you necessarily think of El Salvador being, so savvy as far as what they're doing in the crypto land. That wouldn't have been at the top of my list for sure. But that seems really smart to me.
Yeah, it is. And El Salvador, with such a small GDP, they have what, 5,800 Bitcoin there. It looks like they're up $60 million on their Bitcoin purchasing just because of the way they've been structured it and their DCA strategy. So they're up significantly. And this is still like what we see as low levels of Bitcoin. We honestly believe over where we talk is Bitcoin's going to get to $1 million eventually by 2030, 2035. It's going to get to $1 million a coin. So in that scenario, I mean, El Salvador is going to be sitting real pretty as kind of a lower GDP type country where they don't have the ability to produce the revenue that these other bigger countries can do. So El Salvador might be playing playing from behind right now, but I think they're going to catch up very quickly with this strategy. So.
I think so as well. And I have no idea what the debt to GDP ratio is in El Salvador, but regardless of what it is, it's going to get a whole lot better as far as their balance sheet, I would think, if Bitcoin does anything close to, the numbers you're talking about with $1 million Bitcoin, et cetera. Even if it just goes to 100,000, they're going to be in great shape. Like I said, I don't know their balance sheet or what their ratios are, but it just seems like that's a country to keep an eye on in the future. I just would have never thought that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yes. Man, Rob. Well, thank you so much for letting me come on here again. Obviously, I love coming to hang out and talk a little bit about crypto and see your take on the markets and also how much of that stuff kind of intertwines. So I think that's very valuable. And I love your chart reads here on Solana and Ethereum. Those are really, helpful for me too, because I don't read charts as much. I'm just looking at the fundamental picture of what's happening in crypto. So I think that's great.
Yeah, that's why I like having these conversations with you, because I can read charts, but I don't have all that background fundamental knowledge on what's going on behind the scenes as you do. But yeah, those charts, as ugly as they look now, look really constructive, both of them. So look forward to the next couple of weeks, and let's see how things play out from there. And then if you want to bring up a chart one more time of Bitcoin, there's a bit of a triangle forming here, and that's one of my favorite patterns for a breakout. You can see where we had there it is right there, and you can see where the highs are up here, and then the lows, and then we're forming this triangle here, which is a set of higher lows and lower highs. And I can't tell you which way Bitcoin is going to break, but I can tell you it's getting ready to do something. And the point happens to be right there at 60,000, which we've talked about numerous times as a big point of support and resistance. So the fact that it's creating this triangle with the midpoint of the triangle right at 60,000, we're going to see some movement. And of course, we'll be able to report in the future weeks what the direction is. But that's getting ready to move, and it's getting ready to move a lot. It's a 20,000 point triangle. So you're going to see a 20,000 point move in Bitcoin here in the not too distant future. That's a pretty decently formed triangle there. I like it when you can
Dang.
see multiple touches of the line. And so you could actually bring this over to where you see it touching on the lower highs. And then there's several touches there on the higher lows. So, yeah, something's getting ready to happen here in Bitcoin, Brandon. So I think we're going to be talking about whatever this breakout move is here in the coming weeks. So I think that's pretty exciting for those in
Yeah.
the crypto world.
Yeah. It should be interesting to watch. I can't wait.
Yeah, no, I mean, look forward to talking to you in coming weeks. Thanks as always for spending some of your day with us and letting us know what's going on behind the scenes. And gosh, yeah, I'm still blown away by that El Salvador graphic there.
Yeah.
But to me, what stood out the most, those patterns is just to reiterate what we talked about with Solana and Ethereum. To me, both look constructive to move to the upside. But that chart you showed of the NASDAQ and the separation between NASDAQ and Bitcoin is not going to continue. You don't get separation like that. They're going to come back together. And it seems like the NASDAQ goes down and Bitcoin goes up. That's what I'd expect. So look forward to talking to you in the coming weeks, my friend. And let's see how this plays out with what we've talked about today. So Thanks so much.
All right.
And thanks everybody for viewing. And we look forward to talking again soon. Take care.